I could tell from their smug, condescending demeanor that this was my chance to finally express everything I had bottled up for the past 3 months. I stood in what used to be my home, finishing the last inspection to make sure I hadn't left anything behind. That's when she felt the need to say, "Austin, you know you can come here whenever you want." I exhaled, turned to her and replied, "Well, 2 things about that. First, the restraining order you filed to keep me away says otherwise. And second, this is the last time I'll ever step foot in this place. It once held good memories, but now it's just where everything fell apart. So no, Heather, I won't be back." She frowned slightly, responding, "I know it was harsh, and we didn't want to take it that far, but my lawyer thought it would be best for the kids to keep you away until things cooled down and were settled. It was for your protection, too." "Well, thanks for having so little faith in me that you thought I couldn't control myself," I said, my voice sharp. "You know I've never laid a hand on you or the kids, and I rarely even raised my voice. And if this was about me confronting Dwayne, you needn't have worried. If I take my revenge, it won't be here in front of the kids. You should know me better than that by now. But I guess that's what happens when you get into bed with a man like him and hire a lawyer like yours." That's when Dwayne showed up, draping a possessive arm around Heather's shoulders. He had the decency to look halfway ashamed, but his words told a different story. "Austin, with all due respect, I know you were the best of us when we served together, but you've been out for over 10 years. I was genuinely scared you'd come at me in a rage when all this started, and I didn't want to hurt you. I've already caused you enough pain, and that's the one thing I regret most about this." My mind flashed back to 3 months earlier, when I came home after work to find Heather, Dwayne, a process server, and what looked like hired muscle waiting for me on the porch. They handed me divorce papers along with a restraining order. They even packed a week's worth of clothes for me, and informed me that the happy couple had paid for me to stay at the local Holiday Inn for a week. After that, I was on my own. Heather looked at me with a pained expression and said, as clearly as day, "I'm sorry, Austin. I didn't plan for this to happen. Dwayne and I, well, we just got closer since he retired. I know this will hurt, but we want to make it as easy as possible for you." I grabbed the suitcase, turned around, and headed for my truck. I was furious, practically nuclear inside, but I kept my composure. I didn't want to do anything that might jeopardize my relationship with my kids. I got into the truck and drove in the opposite direction of the Holiday Inn. I sure as hell wasn't going to accept their charity, even if it was petty. I found myself a new place to stay, and for the next week, I ignored all the "I'm sorry" and "please let me know you're okay" texts. I sought advice from a lawyer, only to find out I was pretty much screwed. Since Heather had been a stay-at-home mom and I traveled for work, she was almost guaranteed to get primary custody, with me having liberal visitation. She would keep the house, though they had to buy me out of my half. I wondered how they'd manage that since she had no income and Dwayne had just retired from the army. I guess they found some mortgage company willing to lend to a retired soldier. She had done everything by the book. The only thing that truly bothered me was her going after my pension. That was going to get ugly. I had the week off after meeting with my lawyer, so I spent a few days in bed and a few more at the bottom of a bottle. The anger still burned white-hot inside me, but I knew that acting on it would only harm my chances with the kids. So, I found a modest 3-bedroom house near their school and moved in, which brings me to today. I was given access to the house to remove my belongings, and after they were sure I wouldn't cause a scene, Heather dismissed the court-appointed supervisor. I asked him to stay, though, because I wanted a paper trail to avoid any future complications. I smiled bitterly when I asked about my kids, only to be told that Heather and Dwayne thought it best if they spent the day with their grandparents, so it wouldn't be too hard on me. "Well," I said, "it seems what's hard on hasn't been a priority for quite some time, has it?" "Austin," Heather began, "I know I've broken your heart, and I am so sorry. That was never our intention. We know we have no right to ask, but could you sit with us so we can explain? You haven't given us a chance to talk since all this started. I think if you hear us out, it might help you understand and make peace with everything." "Yeah, man," Dwayne chimed in. "I know it's tough right now, but I really think in time we can work through this. Your love for Heather and the kids is strong enough that we'll figure it out." First off, I said coldly, I'm not your friend anymore. Never really was. Second, there's no working through this. You're dead to me. I'll have to tolerate my cheating ex-wife for the sake of my kids. But make no mistake. You and I are done. If you both need to soothe your guilty consciences by explaining how this just happened, I added, go ahead. I'll give you a minute. It should be amusing to see how you spin it. I won't let you disrespect the woman I love. Dwayne snapped. If we're going to talk, it won't be pretty. I turned to him, smiled, and said, oh, don't worry, we will get into it. Just not here, not now. And rest assured, I won't blindsiding you the way you blindsided me. But let me be clear. I'll call my soon-to-be ex-wife whatever I want, because at the end of the day, that's exactly what she is, a cheating liar. Dwayne leapt from his chair, his eyes blazing with anger. I stood up, shouting, oh, please, give me a reason. Take your shot, you coward. Heather quickly jumped up, grabbing Dwayne's arm. Dwayne, stop. This isn't going to fix anything. You can't blame him, we did this to him. Now sit down. After Wayne sat, I briefly considered provoking him again with a jab about being whipped, but I decided to let it go. It was just another skirmish in a bigger war, and what had just happened was insignificant in the grand scheme. Once we'd all calmed down, I declined the offer of coffee and told him, this is your show. Let's get this over with so I can leave, Austin. I want you to know this first and foremost. This has nothing to do with you as a man, a husband, or a father. I've always respected you, and up until 5 months ago, I was completely happy in our marriage and totally faithful to you. She said, well, you sure have a strange way of showing it. I replied, Austin, please, I know I've hurt you, and you have every right to be upset, but being rude isn't going to help anything. You can't imagine the inner turmoil I've been in since all of this started. I knew I'd hurt you, but I had to follow my heart. I couldn't bear the idea of living the rest of my life settling for anything less than what I know is my perfect match. Dwayne is my soulmate. He's like my other half. I feel whole with him. Surely you wouldn't want to deny me that. You have to admit that up until now, I was a good wife and mother. I turned to Dwayne, who was doing a terrible job of hiding his smug expression. How I would love to punch that grin off his face. But another time for now. My priority was to take Heather down a notch. I'll give you this, Heather. For a woman who's cheated multiple times, you've done a decent job as a mother. That was Dwayne's cue to jump out of his seat. Furious, how dare you? Until Dwayne moved in with us, I never cheated on you. For you to accuse me of that as a blatant lie. I know you're upset, but you will take that back immediately. Sit down. I'm tired of your holier-than-thou attitude. It's time someone gave you both a lesson in humility. I shot back. Dwayne, just let him talk. We tried to be nice, and clearly he needs to take his anger out on someone. Better us than the kids, Heather said as they both stared at me with those smug, self-satisfied looks. Let's just get this over with, Heather added. Dwayne, you're her soulmate, right? I said sarcastically. More than you'll ever be, he shot back. Maybe, but before I invited you into my home, we were doing just fine. I'll never forgive myself for allowing a morally bankrupt predator into my house, especially with a wife I knew was a cheap. That was my mistake, and I won't make it again. Austin, you keep accusing me of cheating, but you have no proof. And you know it's not true, Heather demanded. I'm getting there. But first, Dwayne, let's talk about this whole soulmate business. What was it? She said. Soulmate, her other half. She feels complete with you. Sure. She does have a knack for making you feel special. But give me a second. I pulled out my phone and searched for the video I wanted, then handed it to him. Hit play, Dwayne. He gave me another withering look but pressed play. The video from about 16 years ago was from our wedding day. I had it cued to the perfect spot. We listened as Heather's voice echoed, Austin, my love, from the moment I met you, I knew you were the one, my soulmate, the other half of me. You complete me. I let that sink in for a moment before adding, okay, call me crazy, but if I'm her other half and you're her other half, doesn't that make her 1.5 people? I mean, She has gained a few pounds since we got married, but not that much. Dwayne's face said it all. This was not the scenario he had planned for. Heather jumped into damage control mode. Dwayne, don't give that a second thought. Everyone is allowed one big mistake. Austin was mine until you came along, she said, wrapping her arm around him, leaning in to kiss his cheek with a loud smack and giving me a smug smile. But I knew I had gotten to Dwayne. I grinned and said, my beautiful cheater, but I wasn't your first mistake, was I? Heather looked bewildered. I have no idea what you're talking about, Austin. And stop calling me a cheater. Dwayne Austin quit calling him that. Grow up, she demanded. Do you remember where I met Heather? It was in Paris when we were on leave. What about it? He asked. Exactly, we were on leave and took the cheapest flight to Paris. We ended up at a bar, and in walked two American girls. Heather and her friend were on vacation, looking for love. Heather found it with me. I was hoping for a week with a hot Greek woman, but Heather stole my heart, and it just so happened that she lived an hour from me back home. It felt meant to be, and it was, wasn't it? Heather, my favorite cheater. Stop with that already, she said, exasperated. I ignored her and continued. Fast forward a few months. I'm home, retired from the service, and waiting for the love of my life at the airport. But Heather never got off the plane. An hour later, she called saying she'd be delayed by a few days. I didn't question it. I was so in love. I just waited. Heather interrupted again. That's because there was nothing to question. She sighed. I just brushed it off. Finally, the day of our big wedding arrived. You were there, Dwayne, but before we go any further, let's review my wedding video one more time. Here, take a closer look at my expression as she's telling me I'm her soulmate. Do I look like a man confident in his actions? I glanced between them, then turned to Heather, who looked bewildered. I never noticed before, Austin. Were you having doubts on our wedding day? She asked. Right up until 10 minutes before the ceremony, I wasn't having second thoughts. But you have no idea how close I came to walking away. But why we loved each other, we were fully committed, and we were starting our life together. Why would you question that? Heather asked, confused. I paused, then responded, why do you think I'd question it? What reason would I have to doubt your love and loyalty, Austin? I have no idea why you would have thought that on our wedding day. I was completely and 100% committed to you. I let out a frustrated sigh. Fine, I didn't warn you. But you had your chance to confess right before you arrived. I was standing outside the church with my brother when a guy I had never met approached me. He asked if I was Austin, and when I said yes, he congratulated me on marrying you. I asked him if we knew each other, and he said no, but he knew you. I asked for his name, and he said it was Dave Rebstock. I turned to look at Heather. Her eyes were wide with shock. I continued. Dave then tells me that just a few months ago, he and his fiancée were planning their own wedding. Guess who his fiancée was? Dwayne, that's right. Heather, and they were still engaged when Heather and I met. Would you like to guess if she ever thought to mention that little detail to me? No, she didn't. And when she didn't show up that day, she was back home breaking up with Dave. I shot Heather the coldest look I could muster. So, when you say you've never cheated on me before, Dwayne, I actually believe you. But don't get me wrong, Heather. You are a cheater. Don't ever look at me with that smug, superior expression again. I observed them both, stunned into silence. Their mouths were hanging open like fish, and it felt like I'd hooked both of them on my line. I figured I'd finish with Heather before turning my attention to Dwayne. Reaching into my jacket, I pulled out 3 neatly folded sheets of paper and handed them to Dwayne. What you're holding is what my new friend Dave gave me after our conversation. Turns out they're the wedding vows he wrote for your soulmate here when he was supposed to marry her. He wished me well, and I told him I didn't know anything about him until that day. He believed me, honestly. Dave was a good guy, handsome, fit, and decent. Under different circumstances, we could have been friends, but not here, not like this. Do me a favor. Read the highlighted part out loud, Heather protested softly. Dwayne, you don't need to read it. I already know what it says. Barely able to contain my anger, I snapped, read it. Wayne hesitated but began reading aloud. David, my love, I've waited my whole life for you. From the moment I met you, I knew I'd found my soulmate. You are the other half of me. You complete me. Unable to resist, I sneered. Jesus, Heather. Must be getting crowded in there with all these soulmates. She shot me a glare, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook. You're sitting here, up on your high horse, telling me you couldn't ignore your feelings for your so-called soulmate and that I should understand. Well, all you are is a selfish, entitled cheater. By the time I finished, my voice was raised in a way that was unusual for me. Heather looked genuinely shocked. In all our time together, I rarely raised my voice, even with her and the kids. I'd always been calm and firm, but if there was ever a time for anger, this was it. She tried to defend herself, but it was weak. So if I was such a terrible person, so unworthy of you, why did you marry me? Why didn't you just leave? She asked, exasperated. I sighed. The answer is simple, asked Dwayne next to her. Or your other victim, Dave? You're good, Heather, very good. You had all of us convinced we were the one. I know I was. Dave said the same, and I'm sure Dwayne believes it too, but history has shown that's just not the case, has it? I turned to Dwayne, seeing the mix of disappointment and defiance on his face. I could tell he didn't quite understand yet, but he soon would. He decided to let his pride speak, wrapping his arm around Heather and puffing out his chest as he declared, Don't worry, babe, you just hadn't met me yet, the right guy for you. I've always known you were the one, and I'm going to spend the rest of our lives proving it. He shot me a smug look, and I grinned. Oh, this is going to be fun, I said sarcastically. So, Dwayne, you think she's the one for you? Absolutely. And if you keep calling her a cheater, we're going to have a problem. I ignored his childish threat. Well, does being with Dwayne make you feel like the one, Heather? She shrugged, still bothered by my comments. Yes, Austin, he does. Just like you did. I've said it over and over again. Dwayne makes me feel complete, like I'm his whole world. Dwayne, now regaining his bravado, chimed in, Sorry, buddy, but when you find the one, you just can't deny what the universe is telling you. I know it must be hard for you being replaced like this, but deep down you know that when you see how happy we are, you'll understand. I rolled my eyes and pretended to search my phone, knowing exactly what I was about to do. Let's see, here it is. This is from Dwayne himself just 18 months ago. Let me read it for you both. Well, Austin, it's time to tear up my bachelor card because I've met the one. Amy is just incredible. We're so connected it's almost unreal. She's smart, understands me, amazing in bed, works on base, and is absolutely stunning. I feel like the luckiest man alive. We've been together for about 3 months, and I'm already thinking about proposing. Get ready, boys, because I'm going to need a bachelor party soon. So, Dwayne, how many ones are you supposed to have? Doesn't the term the one imply only one? Between the 3 other he's the cheater here claims to have and the 2 ones you've got, that king-size bed I bought last year is going to get pretty crowded. Dwayne looked as if he had just been hit with a dose of reality, staring at Heather and saying, Baby, I was confused, caught up in loneliness. It didn't last much past that email and Amy's ancient history. Now you know you're the one for me. Oh, so Amy wasn't the one. But Heather is, just like that. I smirked and glanced down at my phone, scrolling. Let's see here, just to clarify. Here we go. Sydney from Fort Hood isn't the one. And hold on, keep scrolling. Dawn from Forts wasn't the one either. You know, Dwayne, I'm a little lost. I have emails from you saying all 3 of these women were the one. I'm no mathematician, but now it looks like you've got 4 ones. I continued, honestly, I don't care about either of you. Dwayne, you're dead to me. As for you, my cheating life, I'm stuck with you because of the kids. For better or worse, my point is that the 2 of you sit here acting like this romance of yours was inevitable, something out of your control. When the truth is, you're both just unfaithful. You deserve the pain you're about to bring upon each other. In fact, I've started a pool with the guys from our unit, betting on which one of you cheats first and how long this mess lasts before it turns into a complete disaster. This enraged my soon-to-be ex-wife. How dare you? How dare you try to turn our friends against us? And they're just as much Dwayne's as they are yours. Just because you're hurt and can't handle the truth about love doesn't mean you can't involve them in this. She then turned to Dwayne. Don't worry, baby. Once they see how happy we are at the wedding, all of this will be forgotten, and Mr. Bitter over there can fight his lonely battles alone. Dwayne tried to sound conciliatory, but it was clear he wanted to dig in deeper. Yeah, Austin, I know the wedding will be the first time the whole crew gets together, and you won't be there. Heather and I thought about inviting you so you could see the kids and hang out with the gang, but we figured it'd be too painful for you. Maybe some of the guys can drop by the next day, though. They might be a little hungover. You know how much they love to party. His smug grin still plastered across his face. I picked up my phone and messaged the group chat. Oh, don't worry about me. I've got my own plans that'll keep me busy that day. A few seconds later, both their phones began to buzz with notifications. If they had been on the table, they would have probably spun from all the LS. Well, what do we have here? Tons of messages from the gang about the wedding, I said, opening the first one and frowning. Then I opened the second and third. Heather noticed my expression and quickly grabbed her phone, skimming the responses. Her head shot up, and her eyes locked on to me. If looks could kill, I wouldn't be sitting here telling you this story. What the hell have you done? She demanded. What do you mean, cheater? I replied calmly. You know exactly what I mean. What did you say to our friends? No one is coming to the wedding. They've all declined. She shoved the phone in my face. I didn't know the exact words, but I had a pretty good idea as I read one of the messages. Sorry, can't make it. Got a barbecue at Austin's place. You know what they say, don't crap where you eat. Dwayne looked shocked. I can't believe the guys would bail on me like this. They wouldn't do that without some persuasion. What did you say to them? First of all, I don't care if you believe me, but I had absolutely nothing to do with this. If they wanted to go to your wedding, I wouldn't have been upset. I wouldn't have taken it personally. I've spoken very little to the group about this whole thing because it's been humiliating for me. But after your invitations went out, I got a call asking when the housewarming party was going to be. I told them I hadn't made any plans yet, and they told me the group decided it would be on the same day as your wedding. I told them they didn't have to do that. It wasn't fair to make them choose, and I was fine with them going to your wedding, but they insisted again. Believe me or don't, but that's what happened. So it looks like your wedding's going to be a bit smaller than you expected. Guess that'll save you some money on food. They both looked as if they'd lost their closest friends, and in a way they had. Though I hadn't actively tried to sabotage their big day, I honestly didn't care enough. The group, however, took a very dim view of what had gone down and wanted nothing to do with their nuptials. They told me they were all coming to my place to christen my new home and show their support. In truth, I would have been wallowing in self-pity that day, so having them around me, and not around Dwayne and Heather, was going to be a much-needed balm for my battered soul. Dwayne was fuming. Just great. I show up to every wedding they have, and the one time I asked them to attend mine, they turned their backs on me. The cheater tried to comfort him. Don't stress about it, baby. We knew things would be awkward. I kind of understand their decision. While this is a wonderful day for us, it's going to be incredibly tough for Austin, and we forced them to pick sides. Honestly, it's admirable they chose to support the person who needs it the most. You'll see, by the next gathering, things will start to get back to normal, and Austin will have no choice but to get used to us being around and deal with it. I did my best to suppress a grin. Yeah, I'll just have to figure out how to handle it. Fortunately, the next party is on my weekend with the kids, so we'll have a fun road trip, and they'll help lift my spirits. Do you know when it is? Dwayne asked. I haven't seen an invitation, but I've been expecting it. Jerry always throws it in July. Yep, it's the weekend after the holiday. I marked it on the calendar, so I know it's my weekend with the kids. Invitations went out 3 weeks ago. Both of them were staring at their phones, clearly realizing what this meant. Dwayne looked like someone had punched him in the gut, and in a way they had. I just can't believe my friends have turned on me like this. We've been like brothers for almost 20 years. He seemed on the verge of tears, and Heather wrapped her arm around his shoulder, sending a furious glare my way. You may not have started this, but you can fix it, and I expect you to. Dwayne. And I have every right to be there, just like you. I laughed. You know, just when I think you can't get any more delusional, you surprise me. I'm not going to lobby on your behalf. You two are completely out of touch. You have no idea how much chaos your so-called love affair has caused and how many lives it's affected. The unit is one thing, but look around. Your family is shattered, my family is wrecked, and that doesn't even touch what's happening to the kids. Her head snapped up. Oh no, you don't. You're not going to use my kids against me. I'm a fantastic mother. I've done the research. Divorce is tough, but it doesn't define kids anymore. In fact, many children from divorced families end up much happier once things settle down. So don't tell me that following my heart is harmful to them. There's nothing more important to me than their happiness. Right? I shot back. We both know that's not true. If it were, you wouldn't be in love with that sorry excuse of a man next to you. Austin shrieked. I just told you that kids from divorced homes do just fine after the initial disruption. I've done my homework. I shook my head. You idiot, of course, children from broken homes can recover, and sure, they feel more stable once their warring parents finally split. But that's not what Emma and Liam are going through, is it? We had a loving, supportive home full of laughter and stability. Now, they don't know what's going to happen next. If you had bothered to really talk to them instead of telling them how wonderful everything's going to be, you'd know that for the first time in their lives, they're scared and uncertain about their future. This hit Heather hard. Despite everything, she had been an amazing mother before all this. She was the perfect blend of friend and parent, knowing exactly when to play each role. Who she had become over the past few months, I couldn't recognize, but this clearly struck her at her core. I continued, let me tell you something. Every time one of the kids comes home sullen and withdrawn, heading straight to their room, it's because you're a cheater. Every time they hear a snicker at school or catch someone smirking as they pass by, it's because of your affair. My son, the boy you raised, has told me he doesn't see himself ever getting married. What does that say to you? Heather's face paled with horror. Oh God, no, he can't feel that way. I gave her a cold look. Give me one reason why he wouldn't feel that way. The most important woman in his life just tossed aside the most important man in her life for some stranger. What other conclusion is he supposed to come to? And what about Emma? You might think you've taught her to never settle for less than what she wants. But all you've really shown her is that it's okay to blow up a perfectly happy home for something shiny and new. Congratulations, Heather. You've earned my vote for Mother of the Year. Heather was visibly shaken. She didn't like the reflection I just held up to her. But it was too late now. Dwayne decided to jump in, trying to play the hero. Don't listen to him, babe. He's fighting a losing battle. When Emma and Liam see how happy their mom is, and how much better their home life will be, everything will be fine. Austin, I know you're hurting, and as much as you don't believe me, I'm truly sorry for that. If there was any way we could have avoided it, we would have. But that being said, I've never seen you act this bitter and vindictive. Give us some credit here. We're doing what's best for the kids. Oh, I'm sure you think you are, I said sarcastically. I'll never forgive myself for letting a home wrecker like you into my life. I was torn between my duty to the unit and my responsibility to my family. In the end, I trusted in the one relationship I thought was secure. I warned my neighbors about you. I warned the people who hired you about you. The only person I didn't warn was myself, and now my kids are going to pay the price for that mistake. I'll be spending every moment from now until your inevitable breakup shielding them from you, two morally bankrupt individuals. The only hope I have is that one of you does the inevitable and leaves before Emma turns 18, in 5 years. If not, I can almost guarantee that Dwayne will go after her once she comes of age. It's like defiling someone's pool with a roar. He jumped off the table and charged at me, fury blazing in his eyes. I was fully prepared, calmly stepping aside from his assault. After a brief struggle, I had him locked in a tight and agonizing arm lock. When we served together, I was tasked with teaching him the ropes. While I taught him much of what he knows, I certainly didn't show him everything I know. He bellowed at me, "I'm going to kill you." Isn't it fascinating how bending someone's arm to the brink of breaking can silence them? "Shut up, you filthy piece of trash," Heather screamed. "This stops now. Let him go immediately, or else." I hissed in Dwayne's ear, "Are you going to calm down if I release you? Give me your word, whatever that's worth, and I'll consider not making you wear a cast in your wedding photos." I tightened the hold. He yelled in agony. Heather demanded Dwayne tell him he'd calm down. "It's not worth it. I'll back down, just let me go," he said. "Say please." "Oh, now you have to say pretty please," I taunted, pulling the hold tighter. I swear I could hear bones cracking. To his credit, he handled the pain quite well, but everyone has a breaking point. "Let me go, please," he finally begged. Smirking, I released him, shoving him back to stop him from taking another swing at me. To my surprise, he was smarter than I gave him credit for, spinning around and glaring at me with fiery rage, though he kept his distance. Heather was furious. "Austin, I don't even recognize you anymore. This man saved your life and you saved his. I understand your anger, but accusing him of something so vile is utterly revolting. How could you say such things? Things I'm beyond disappointed in you." I shook my head. "Do you really think I'm just saying this to make you angry? Do you honestly believe this is just your angry boyfriend talking?" "Sit down," I said firmly. "No, I won't," she replied stubbornly. "I gave you the time to understand, but this has crossed the line." I sighed. "Suit yourself, but you're going to hear me out before I leave." I glanced at Dwayne, who was still glaring at me with open hostility while shaking feeling back into his arm. "Hey Dwayne, help me out here. I've got 3 more expressions I'm struggling with: bagging a brace, scoring a hat trick, and hitting for the cycle." His eyes widened, knowing full well what was coming but trying in vain to delay the inevitable. I don't know what you're talking about. Probably more nonsense you've been spewing since you got here." Heather sneered. "Really, Daniel? Suits you." I responded, "Don't say I didn't give you a chance to tell the truth." "Well, my dear, let me give you a lesson in Dwayne's E. In most places, bagging a brace means getting 2 of something, like scoring 2 goals in hockey. But in Dwayne's E, it means sleeping with 2 women in the same family. In fact, he stayed with the last one long enough for her daughter to turn 18 so he could sleep with her. I don't know if poor Amy ever figured out he was with her daughter, but it was only a couple of weeks later that he dumped her." "That can't be true," Heather exclaimed. "Dwayne, tell me it's not true." Dwayne's mouth was moving like a fish out of water, flapping open and closed. "Oh, it gets better," I continued. "In Dwayne's E, scoring a hat trick doesn't mean getting 3 goals. It means sleeping with 3 women in the same family. He's pulled that one off a couple of times. Don't worry, though. I've already warned your dad about Dwayne's little habit, and he's promised to never let your future husband near your future." Even I have to admit, for an older woman, Donna still got it. By now, Dwayne looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him up. His face beat red, obsessing over a piece of fluff on the floor. And finally, hitting for the cycle in baseball means getting a single, double, triple, and home run all in one game. But in Dwayne's case, it means sleeping with a girlfriend, her daughter, her mother, and her sister. To my knowledge, he's only pulled that one off once. But hey, wrecking 3 families in one go is pretty impressive. Got to hand it to you, Dwayne. You're a master home wrecker. Heather was shocked. "Relax, sweetheart," I said. "Darren's well aware of Dwayne's fondness for his women's sisters. Let's just say I wouldn't count on that family trip to the Jersey Shore happening this year." I then asked her to do one more thing. "I'm sure you don't believe me, and I expect Dwayne's going to deny everything and twist the story to make himself look innocent." I held up my phone. "If you need proof, just ask. It's all here." I looked at the 2 of them. Their smug, condescending attitudes had evaporated. If this were a boxing match, this would be the later rounds when I landed body shots, and they were covering their faces, spitting out their mouth guards, waiting for the knockout. But there was no need. They'd take themselves out. I was done. Turning to Wayne, I said, "Once I walk out that door, consider me dead, because you're dead to me. If you see me at the soccer field, stay on the opposite side. If we're at a school event, sit on the other side, unless one of my kids is in danger. Never contact me again. Do you understand? He couldn't even bring himself to look at me. I glared at Heather. As for you, I'm sorry I didn't protect you from this predator better. You may think you're happy, but I guarantee he'll break your heart unless you break his first. I once loved you deeply and can say without hesitation that you were a great mother until he led you astray. I brought him into our lives, and for that, I will always carry shame. You're strong and you will heal, but he's already making you a less effective mom. When you finally realize it, just know that I've been doing everything in my power to reduce the impact. Yes, I'm angry with you. I've sacrificed all my personal happiness for the next few years until our kids are old enough to manage on their own. This is my way of making up for losing my direction. I loved you for 17 years, but for the past 3 months, I have felt only hatred. And now I feel nothing. I recognize you solely as the mother of my children, and that's where it ends. We will only interact because of our kids, and that's all. Goodbye. I turned away, walked into the living room, and suddenly remembered that the court-appointed supervisor was still there, sitting silently, looking shocked that I had forgotten about him. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I've completely wasted your time and dragged you into something I know you didn't want to witness. I'm done here. I've gotten what I needed. I should have let you leave sooner. I just want to sincerely apologize. Can I offer you something for your time and trouble? As we were heading out the door, he looked at me like he'd been through a battle and said, Sir, this isn't my first time doing this. I've seen a lot of these situations and they're usually unpleasant, but that was the most intense exchange I've ever witnessed. Mad respect for how you handled it. You don't owe me anything. Good luck moving forward. He shook my hand, got in his car, and drove off. I got into my truck, my few prized possessions packed up neatly, and drove away toward a new chapter, dignity intact. 10 years later, he and I were dancing at Emma's wedding. My God, she's stunning, I said. Yes, Heather responded. She really inherited the best of both of us and somehow avoided the bad traits. How's it going with Greg? She asked. He seems fine. You met at work, right? Yeah, we met on the job, but you don't need to pretend to care, she said. I made my bed, and well, you warned me, and I was too embarrassed to admit you were right. I traded a Cadillac for a shiny sports car that broke down constantly and cost me everything. For what it's worth, we weren't his first victims, and he hasn't changed. He's still up to his old ways, causing chaos wherever he goes. I know, I said, but I still can't believe I lost sight of what truly mattered, and thank you for not rubbing it in after he and I split, or even after Bill or Ethan. You could have easily done that. Heather sighed. I know you think I haven't changed, and my history with men doesn't suggest otherwise, but I like to believe that deep down, I've always been searching for you. If I don't find it, I move on. I understand now what I had, and I'll regret losing that until my dying day. I smiled at her and said, Don't be so hard on yourself. Am I really that irreplaceable? She giggled and playfully hit my arm. Humility was never your strong suit. I nodded. Seriously though, now that the kids are grown and doing well, I hope you find happiness again. You did a fantastic job with them. I had my doubts, but you proved me wrong, and for that, I'll always be grateful. Even Lori is impressed, and coming from a broken home herself, she really connected with them. Heather smiled. You know, I really tried to hate Lori, but it's impossible. She's wonderful. She makes you happy, and the kids adore her. You made a good choice. As the song ended, I scanned the room, locked eyes with the love of my life, and knew I needed to be with her right then. Thanks for the dance, Heather, I said. Now I need to get back to my wife.